Okay, so I actually wasn't planning to shoot this video, but this episode or say this video, it happened because I went and I watched Dhurandhar. Now, here's something about the film. The film ended, the screen went dark, and I didn't reach for my phone immediately. I just sat there, not thinking about the box office numbers or the reviews, but about something way more deeper. Why do some films make people visibly uncomfortable? Why do certain movies instantly get boxed into one word, propaganda, as if that label alone is enough to shut down the conversation? That's when I realized this episode isn't about one single film. It's about something much bigger and deeper. It's about why national narratives matter in cinema and why India is only now beginning to reclaim its own. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. If you have grown up watching Indian cinema, particularly Bollywood, I am talking about the early 2000s when our generation was growing up. You know this feeling instinctively. India on screen was always tired, always broken, always apologetic. Our culture was something that needed explanation. Hindu identity was either comic relief, regressive, or quietly sidelined, and our civilizational confidence was replaced with constant self doubt. Slowly, almost invisibly, poverty became our personality. Slums, hunger, filth, and hopelessness. As if that was the only India worth showing to the world. That wasn't accidental. International awards rewarded this gaze, film festivals amplified it, and a pattern was formed. Suffering wasn't just shown, it was aestheticized. Well, I think that would be the right word to describe it. And in all of this, you would notice something was absolutely going wrong and something was missing. Where were the stories of our national heroes? Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Veer Shiromani, Maharana Pratap, Ahom General Lachit Borphukan, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Veer Savarkar, Alluri Sita Ram Raju. People who actually defended this land, its culture, its faith, its dignity, its identity. Not because their stories weren't cinematic, but because they didn't fit a particular worldview. Instead, invaders who invaded India were romanticized in our films. Atrocities that happened with the native people of India that were in a very softened and a very romanticized way. And it was all wrapped in the language of art and progressive cinema. Let's be honest. This wasn't neutrality, this was ideology. Now, here's the irony about which I thought after watching Dhurandhar, and I wanted to make this video just to highlight this irony. Now, the same people who insist cinema should be apolitical were perfectly comfortable with films that pushed left-leaning ideas, socialist nostalgia, and selective secularism, and a deep discomfort with Indian civilizational pride. I don't remember if it was ever labeled as propaganda. That was called good cinema. That was called art with conscience. But the moment a film tells the Indian side of the story, suddenly it's dangerous, suddenly it's propaganda, suddenly it's polarizing. And that tells you something very clearly. The problem was never politics in cinema. The problem was who was allowed to speak. This ideological confusion very well showed up in Indian spy films. Think about what espionage actually is. Real intelligence work is not loud, it's not glamorous. It doesn't announce itself. It's built on silence. Long stretches where nothing happens. On patience, sometimes years are spent waiting for just one little clue or one little moment. On paranoia, never knowing who's watching you, who's compromised and who's lying. Long-term sacrifice, personal, emotional, and that is irreversible. They carry identities, false names, false lives, false loyalties. Now, contrast this. What mainstream Indian spy movies gave us? The spy universe. Now I find it really funny. In which universe does ISI, think of it, in which universe does ISI conveniently help Raw again and again? Where the antagonist of the film is always an ex-Indian intelligence or law officer, where foreign adversaries are vague, softened, or mysteriously competent, but the internal betrayal is the default villain, where real danger always comes somewhere from within India, and our intelligence officers, and by the way, active serving agents, are dancing with the beautiful, glamorous Pakistani ISI agents on some random foreign location, cracking jokes mid-mission, leaving trails everywhere, operating like celebrities instead of shadows. That isn't actually an espionage. That's a vacation montage with guns. There's no sense of consequence, no fear of exposure, no understanding that one mistake, one little mistake can cost not just a life but an entire network. There's no depiction of what actually breaks spies: the loneliness, the constant lying, the inability to trust even yourself, the knowledge that you may never be acknowledged. Real spies don't return to applause, they return to anonymity if they return at all. But in these films, the spy becomes a perfect fashion model. Perfect hair, perfect body, perfect morals, perfect escape routes. The job is practically reduced to style, and that influences perception, just not in a way that serves us. Because it quietly tells the audience that Indian intelligence is reckless, that our institutions are morally compromised, that our enemy is always smarter, not through dialogue, but through repetition. Okay, now which brings me back to Dhurandhar. The film didn't glamorize intelligence work, it stripped it bare. It showed something most films avoid, that the life of an undercover agent is not about all those glamorous, swaggy moments. It's about disappearing like thin air, about waking up every day as someone else, about cutting off families, festivals, funerals, basically cutting off with your own real identity, with who you actually are. Knowing that if you die, there may be no body, no funeral, no flag, no medals, and no applause, just pure silence. And that's when something clicked. The discomfort people feel, it comes when cinema stops selling fantasy and starts showing truth from within our reality. Okay, now zoom out from this Dhurandhar review. Something over the last decade has changed in Indian cinema. A new genre of filmmakers have emerged, not from South Delhi dinner tables or South Bombay elite circles, but from places closer to the soil. They shattered a deeply arrogant myth that Indian audience will consume whatever slop you throw at them. Now this raises the question, the real India. What about the real India? The office-going man, the daily wage worker, the middle-class family, the small-town kid watching films on a cracked phone screen. They didn't stop loving cinema. Bollywood stopped seeing them, and a vacuum was created. And guess what? Whenever there is a vacuum, the vacuum has to get filled. And the vacuum was filled by regional cinema, Telugu cinema, Kannada cinema, Tamil cinema. Films like Bahubali, RRR, Kantara. These films didn't apologize for Indian culture. They didn't explain it away. They celebrated it. They made Indians proud of who they were. Not as a political statement, but as an emotional one. What these films did differently was way simple. They told stories from the Indian lens, not for Western approval, not for festival validation, but for the average Indian. Someone who goes to work, pays taxes, worries about family, loves his country. Films like Uri the Surgical Strike, the Kashmir Files, the Bengal Files, Tanhaji, Chhawa, Article 370, RRR, Kantara, Bahubali, and the latest to the lot, Dhurandhar. They all said one simple thing, that our story matters, and that shifted the center of gravity. Now let's talk about the word everyone fears, propaganda. Now I have this question that why is propaganda acceptable when America does it? It may sound a shocker, but let me explain. If you have watched Top Gun, it revived US military recruitment. Zero Dark 30 framed counter-terror operations. Argo rewrote geopolitical memory. Even for that matter, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It places every global savior in American institutions. Now, the thing is, that's not accidental. That's soft power. I've told this earlier, even in the video I made on soft power, that Cinema is how powerful nations tell the world who they are. Cinema shapes perception about a nation to the world. So, coming back to the topic. So, when America does it, it's storytelling. When India does it, it's propaganda. Now, the question is why? Now, the thing is, India has every right to tell its story, promote its culture, to expose its wounds, confront its past, to defend itself against erasure. This isn't hate, this is narrative sovereignty. Now you may ask, so why the meltdown? Because control is slipping. For decades, a small group believed they owned the Indian cinema. But cinema doesn't belong to gatekeepers or even the filmmakers. It belongs to the audience. And the audience has changed the channel. A new Bharat is rising. Not angry, not insecure, just done of being ashamed. Cinema was never neutral, it will never be. The real question isn't, is this propaganda or not? The real question is, who gets to decide a nation's narrative? Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll catch you in the next one, and until then, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, Vande Mataram.